universe you and I are living in is a far more novel and complicated place than the early universe was. Well, some people would say, well, that's just a consequence of the unfolding of developmental processes. But this asks the question, what are developmental processes? Why should the universe have a preference for order over disorder? Human technologies, languages, migrations, art movements, ideologies are not something different from nature. They're the same download of process that we see in the movement of continents, the evolution of new species of animals, except that these human novel emergent situations are happening much more quickly. So I see the cosmos, if you will, as a kind of novelty-producing engine, a kind of machine which produces complexity in all realms, physical, chemical, social, whatever, and then uses that achieved level of complexity as the platform for further complexity. Really, time is only experienced by the events which occur within it. And I maintain that the early universe had very little going on, and consequently, time moved very, very slowly. The character of time as we approach the present is that there are more and more physical domains and energetic domains in which change can occur. For example, the early universe was a pure plasma, a pure swarm of unassociated electrons. You didn't even have atomic systems, let alone chemistry, molecular chemistry, life, complex speciated life, and dynamically balanced planetary ecosystems. Each one of those more complex phenomena crystallized out or emerged, if you will, from the previous systems that had come into existence. So when I say time is speeding up, what I mean really is that more and more is happening. More and more is happening. And if you ask the question, well, what would be the ultimate state of connectivity or of happening? It's when all points are connected to all other points. Somehow this concept of connectivity is intimately linked to the concept of complexity. Consciousness is this integrative function in biology which takes data which may appear profoundly unrelated and in fact brings it into some kind of a congruent relationship. We say an organism coordinates a point of view. Well, in a way, what's happening over time is that the universe is coordinating a point of view. And as it does this, it becomes somehow more aware, more self-conscious, more being-like and less thing-like. And with the advent of human beings using spoken language, a new kind of possibility was born. It's called epigenetic change. In other words, change which is not about genes, but which is about languages, customs, behaviors of human beings. Epigenetic change reaches its dramatic culmination in speech, writing, and communication of all sorts. And so the carriers of epigenetic change, the human beings, are automatically then the carriers of accelerated novelty. And so when you look at, let's say, evolution on a coral reef, and you compare it, let's say, to the evolution of political ideas in modern Europe, obviously, modern Europe's rate of change in this domain is thousands of times faster. So by moving from the genetic to the epigenetic realm, we have vastly accelerated all kinds of processes. Now we appear to be about to move from the strictly human domain to the human-machine symbiosis domain. And of course, machine machines process information, make connections, and do their work at a rate thousands of times faster than any human being can work. In the 19th century, if you spoke of nature having a purpose, you were thought to be anti-evolution. Because in the 19th century, there was great pain to eliminate anything like preformation or teleology or purpose or God, all these things they were trying to eliminate from evolutionary theory. And until very recently in scientific thought, the idea has been that events are pushed by the causal necessity embedded in the events which preceded them. In other words, if you ask the question, what is the most important event or moment in terms of shaping this moment, the answer would be the moment just before this moment, because it hands on the energy, the space, the time. Recently, mathematicians have evolved what they call the notion of attractors, or strange attractors in some cases. And these are processes where a dynamic is not pushed by causal necessity from behind, but it's pulled by a point in the future. What the universe is doing is it is under the sway of what I call the transcendental object at the end of time. And that is this domain of hyperconnectivity, that it would be perfect novelty. And all nature aspires for this state of perfect novelty. You could almost say that nature abhors habit, and so it seeks the novel by producing various kinds of phenomena at every level in biology, chemistry, and society. Because, science tells us that we're the products of a cosmic accident. We're at the edge of an ordinary galaxy in an ordinary star system, and we're damn lucky to be here. And that's it. That's our place, a very existential notion of our place in the cosmos. But if you take this other point of view, that process is under the influence of an attractor, and that the value the attractor is maximizing is novelty, then suddenly, for the first time in 500 years, human beings are moved back to the center of the stage, because we are the most novel thing on this planet. We are everything biology is, plus technology, language, politics, philosophy, art, so forth and so on. So suddenly human beings become important, not mere cosmic witnesses to a meaningless cosmos, but the cutting edge of a cosmos that glories in order and is moving toward higher states of order. And at the present moment, we are the carriers. Once it was the volcanic processes that shaped this planet. Once it was the life of the early oceans. Once it was the great dinosaurs. But today, humanity represents the cutting edge of complexity and this process of moving toward complexification. So without invoking God or any sort of myth, you give meaning to human life. What is man's purpose? To advance and preserve novelty. The purpose of being a human is to complexify reality even more, to hand on a more diverse, more complicated, more multifaceted universe to our children. For some time now, we've been involved in building complex prostheses, which we call machines and computers. They are part of us. We don't perceive them as part of us because we identify with the flesh and exteriorize the fabricated metal. But in fact, they are a part of us as much as our political systems, our agriculture production systems, so forth and so on. So the animal body has reached the limits of its evolutionary ability. The degrees of freedom accessible to us are so multifarious that we can actually appreciate for the first time our circumstance. And our circumstance is awe-inspiring. I mean, we are about to take the step out of matter. The planet is on a collision course with the most profound event it's possible to imagine. The freeing of organic life from the chrysalis of matter. For 1 billion years there's been life on this planet, but never life that could step outside of matter. But this is obviously what's in the cards, and we are privileged to be central to that event. People have said to me, well, don't you find it a little strange that such a momentous event would occur in human history? After all, human history is 10,000 years wide. The planet is 5 billion years old. Pretty unusual coincidence that human history would be happening when this cosmic event happened. No, that's completely wrong. Human history is being caused by the nearby presence of this event. In other words, if you think of the event as something which has shells of influence, some of its shells of influence reach so far back in time that they drag life out of the primitive oceans. Some of its shells of influence reach so far back in time that they define the emergence of the hominid line out of the higher primates. Some shells reach back to Egypt, some to medieval time. As you approach the present, it becomes stronger and stronger, but I would argue that the presence of human civilization on this planet is the strongest evidence we have that matter and organizational processes are about to make some kind of a leap to a new order of being. What history is the 25,000-year transition zone. Before you enter the zone, you're an animal. After you leave the zone, you're a god. Well, the main reason physicists are not friendly to a progressive concrescent model like this is because you would have to give credit to biology for being a stage higher than chemistry, and you would have to give credit to human history as a stage higher than biology. And physicists study physics. If you study physics, there is no biology. You don't have to deal with issues of biology when you study physics. I mean, there is something called biophysics, but it's not well received in physics or biology. So physicists tend to discount biology. Even though life on this planet is 4.83 billion years old, physicists just discount it. They call it an epiphenomenon. Well, then when you talk to sociologists, they give no credit to physics. Science has compartmentalized nature in order to analyze it, and there is no theory of nature as such. And that's really what I'm offering. I'm offering a theory which covers physics, chemistry, geology, biology, sociology, linguistics, the whole thing. In other words, not saying man is some special category, not saying that we need artificial divisions, but that over the entire domain of known phenomena, this tendency to complexify through time, A, and B, faster and faster, can be discerned. We need a theory of everything. Physics talks about theories of everything, but none of these theories of everything address biology, let alone sociology, linguistics, and the phenomenon of human being. Novelty is not necessarily good or nice. Novelty is complex. That's what it is. And so I see really a concatenation of tendencies and forces here at the end. It's only going to get weirder. The level of contradiction is going to rise excruciatingly. even beyond the excruciating present levels of contradiction. I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. And at that point, novelty theory can come out of the woods. Because eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's just too nuts. It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. So between now and 2012, the next 14 years, I look for the invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, possible human immortality, and at the same time, appalling acts of brutality, genocide, race baiting, homophobia, famine, starvation, because the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed. The collapse of the socialist world, the rise of the internet, these are changes so immense, nobody could imagine them ever happening. And now that they have happened, nobody even bothers to mention what a big deal it is. The fact that there is no such thing as the Soviet Union, people never talk about it anymore. But when I was a kid, the notion that that would ever change was beyond conceiving. So the good news is that as primates, we're incredibly adaptable to change. Put us in a desert, we survive. Put us in the jungle, we survive. Under Hitler, we survive. Under Nixon, we survive. We can put up with about anything, and it's a good thing because we're going to be tested to the limits. And this is why the right wing is so alarmed, because what they see going on is the breakdown of all tradition, all order, all sanctioned norms of behavior. And they're quite right that it's happening. But they're quite wrong to conclude that it should be resisted or is somehow evil. The mushroom said to me once, it said, this is what it's like when a species prepares to depart for the stars. You don't depart for the stars under calm and orderly conditions. It's a fire in a madhouse. And that's what we have, the fire in the madhouse at the end of time. This is what it's like when a species prepares to move on to the next dimension. The entire destiny of all life on the planet is tied up in this. We are not acting for ourselves or from ourselves. We happen to be the point species on a transformation that will affect every living organism on this planet at its conclusion. Well, the great watershed difference between the archaic understanding and what is called scientific materialism is the archaic mind understood, in fact perceived, that nature is conscious. Nature is alive. Nature is an organism full of intent. The goal of the archaic mind is to connect with, communicate with, and align itself to this greater Gaian holism, which is sometimes called nature, the great spirit, the realm of the ancestors. But this is what the archaic mind understood and was comfortable with, and in fact it is true. Our own decision to view the universe as dead, as inanimate, as unintelligent, allowed us, permitted us to dissect it, use it, and deny its validity outside of human purpose. Now the consequences of living like that is coming back to haunt us. You know, we have almost destroyed our home. We have almost cut the earth from beneath our own feet. So this impulse toward the Gailanic and the archaic is a survival instinct. At this point, we must give reverence and credence to nature and nature's methods, because no other methods will allow us to work our way out of the present mess we're in. High temperature, high energy resource extraction, commodification, mega agriculture, we're at the end of the rope for these things. So the archaic holds answers, but it only holds answers if we are willing to think of the universe as a living, intelligent entity with which we are in partnership, not set against, but that in fact we are a part of a morphogenetic intent and an unfolding reality that is larger than human understanding. Imagine larger than human understanding.
So the whole entire Milky Way galaxy is a being?
Well, it's an organism, yes. And the galaxy is a kind of an organism. You could think of it as a fractal resonance with the cell. The galaxy has a nucleus of very dense material where very mysterious processes are going on. Then it has a cytoplasmic envelope of stars and gas clouds that surround that core. And then it is an individual, very distinctly defined by the vast emptiness that lies between it and the next galaxy. Yes, I think nature builds by fractal intent, and that all organisms have a core and then a deployed surround, whether we're talking about the cell, the solar system, the Earth, the galaxy. In the process of the conservation of novelty, structures are created with cores that are more complex than their outlying neighborhoods. To my mind, a galaxy hanging in space is a picture of the time wave. Every star is a data point in an enormous computer simulation of the novelty wave. That's why it has that spiral structure. You know, scientists are very puzzled that the galaxies don't fly apart. They don't seem to have enough mass that their gravitation should hold them together. And there's been a lot of talk about dark matter or some missing factor. Well, the missing factor is novelty. The galaxy stays together because the galaxy wants to be a galaxy. In other words, it wants to hold on to the level of novel morphology that it has achieved. It has an actual appetite for expressing itself in that form. That's why the galaxies are spirals, and in a sense, those spirals are very large pictures of the time wave where we can at last see it not confused with its background or foreground. So everything organizes itself fractally, spirally, with a dense center in its spatial domain and a dense center in its temporal domain. We are like this. Galaxies are like this. Planets, stars, bird flocks, coral reefs. But in the case of the galaxy, it's particularly easy to observe the structure because the thing is so huge that its forces dominate and damp out other forces which might distort it.